Hello, Zeno.
Hi.
Welcome to my channel. I'm so happy to have you. You are my honored guest. And
Awesome to be here.
yeah,
Mhm.
awesome. So I discovered your channel. It popped up on my homepage,
Yeah.
and it was the title of the video that got my attention. So I
Yeah.
clicked on it and I started listening to your video, and I was just like, oh my gosh, he talks about the same things that not only do I believe in
Yeah.
personally, but that I speak about on my channel. And I speak about, the manifestations and how to create your reality. And
Yeah.
I speak about how to become self-aware, how that's so important to a person's
Yeah.
spiritual growth. And so your video was just like, wow. And so I started watching more of your videos to see
Mhm.
what you were all about. And I thought, I would love to have this young man on my channel, because I'm
Well,
in
there
my
you go.
50s.
Here I
So
am.
you're very young. I would love to have
Not that
because it's
young.
so, yeah. So it's just really rare to find someone that is young and in their youth still that has become self-aware. And
Yeah.
that's just, it's hard to find self-aware individuals, period, let alone if they're young.
Yeah.
So, and you're barely hatched. So,
Well, there you go.
yeah. So what I want to do is just start off with some questions.
Yeah.
Basically, maybe let's go back in your past just for a little bit
Yeah.
and give
Easy.
a brief overview. And so I'm just going to read from here because I didn't have time to memorize all these questions. So if
No, that's all right.
you don't mind, Zeno. But can you just give us like a brief overview of where you're from and
Hmm.
like how your childhood traumas and memories literally shaped your adult life up
Yeah.
until you had that pivotal moment
Yeah.
where you decided in your life enough is enough?
Yeah.
You just share with us
Yeah.
briefly.
I'm a mixed salad when it comes to nationality. Well, born in Germany, and then as a newborn, moved straight to Italy, Sardinia for 5 years. My dad was in the Air Force, German Air Force, and got stationed in Sardinia for 5 years. Spent 5 years there, and 5 years of age, moved back to Germany. And I think my parents just had enough. Like when they came back to Germany, they realized there's another world out there, and I think they just wanted to change the scenery. And so they just basically decided to choose Australia. They looked on the world map and spent 2 years in Germany relearning German, I guess, or what is relearning, but at the time I was only really speaking Italian. So I spent 2 years there speaking or learning German, and then with like seven and a half, moved to Australia, moved to Sydney, and grew up there, on the beaches, surfing. Um, yeah, amazing lifestyle. And yeah, I think all the moving around, early on, I had a very serious father, a lot of instability. And I never really lived at one place more than a few months, maybe a year or two the most. And a few problems at home. And I think that's sort of started the whole, I guess, problems with anxiety initially, where I was just really insecure. Had massive problems with anxiety attacks. And then at school, typical kids, they find the weak points, and I was one of those ones. Still had a bit of a German accent, so instead of just laughing it off, I took it all very to heart. Um, and yeah, the anxiety was still there. It got probably the worst phase was kind of like early 20s. And I think having a racing mind and having a really unstable background, um, yeah, it was kind of a melting pot, psychologically. And at some point in my early 20s, I said to myself, I'm either gonna like jump off a bridge, or there's something I have to find out what's going on, because my mind was so full of noise, so full of stuff. I couldn't concentrate. got to the point where I was even hallucinating. You know, I was so scared at night. And so for some reason, one day I found myself just driving to a library and I picked up a book about Buddhism. And I guess that kind of started the whole thing, you know, meditating. And when I opened it up, it was like eating Thai food for the first time. I was like, this is a whole new world I never knew existed, you know, like maybe I'm not just thought. Maybe there is something other, you know, out there than me just being in my mind and all this stuff. So that kind of, you know, sort of started that journey of discovering, you know, yourself and what your mind is and who you actually are in consciousness, and that whole trip in its own. So I went down the whole, I guess, Buddhist ego trip for a while there. You know, I became the quiet person and the wise one, you know, and I was really into that for a while. But fast forwarding, I guess it gave me an insight as to like what I actually am. And when I sat down and meditated, when I watched the mind, and I was doing this for years and years, that was all good. But when I tried to put my life back together, all the old thoughts, the old beliefs, who I perceived myself to be, you know, that identity was always filtering its way back into my consciousness. And so I was in limbo for many years. I just didn't know what to do. I was trying to put my life back together. It didn't work. All the old stuff would come back in, or it's self-sabotage. And then eventually at 42, I realized that unless I was going to drop who I perceived myself to be, this concept of myself that I've been dragging around my whole life, nothing was going to change, no action. Nothing I was going to do was going to change my life until I guess I dropped this identity and created something consciously for myself that empowered me. And that's when the big shift happened.
Thank you. That was quite a story.
Yeah.
And I actually did listen to enough of your videos to realize that you have talked about those things a little bit. You talked about a little bit, sprinkle in
Yeah.
is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say, a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit of your past in each of those videos. So, oh my goodness, to get the full picture of you, I would have to listen to every single video.
Yeah.
But
I
I'm
mean,
glad that you just,
that's just short form. I mean, you could go into so much more detail, but
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. But I was just curious, like what like single event, like was there like a trigger event that literally because you
Yeah.
mentioned in your videos that you died, you know,
Yeah. The
in like
perception of who I thought I
42.
was. Yeah.
So so I liken that like as to like personally my old man dies every single day
Yeah.
and I become a new
Yes.
renewed in spirit every single day. I transform and transcend my former self. So is that something that
Yeah.
you can relate to and resonate with as far as like,
Yes. I mean, there's two aspects, I guess. The first one that changed a lot for me is I did a teaching called "Who Am I." I don't know if you've ever heard of that. They call it the fiery path. It's a really old Hindu spiritual teaching, and it's as black and white as you can possibly come across, where you basically look for the source of
mhm,
I. You know, who is
black and
going,
white?
who's doing, who's on a spiritual journey. We call ourselves I all the time. You know, I'm working on myself. I'm going shopping. And so I did that for a couple of years, and I looked and I searched and I wanted to find who's this I within me that is doing everything. And I got to a point where I realized, you know, this person actually doesn't exist. Um, so that was the first thing. And that's when I said, like, when I was in limbo for a while, where I realized I was consciousness. I wasn't actually this person, but and then that was the first main thing. And then the second thing that really sort of changed everything for me is when I truly let go of that old concept that I was still dragging around, whereas I realized I was consciousness. I'm not my past. I'm not my future. I'm not anything that I add on to myself, you know,
Okay.
thoughts, assumptions, beliefs, my past, whatever's happened. And so what I did is I stepped into a version of myself that I consciously created, you know, instead of unconsciously living as
Right.
somebody that was handed to
Right.
me from my culture, my parents, my past experiences. And I saw it like switching a light on, you know. I realized nothing I could do was ever going to change my life because I was living my life through a perceived version of myself that was never going to empower me, never going to allow me to live a fulfilled life. And when I saw myself that I was telling myself this story, this inner narrative for over 25 years, in that moment in time, I realized I could do the exact opposite. So I went all in on my inner world. Just like I'd been teaching myself unconsciously, I'm living in limitation. I don't have this. I'm not this. I'm not that. I just went all in on my inner world and said, you know what? I'm only going to adopt things that empower me. I didn't care what it was. Because I realized
Right.
the subconscious is like you're feeding it everything all day, every day. And that's actually guiding the ship, that is guiding everything in your life. Where you're going, we perceive ourselves to be, we think that we are actually making decisions consciously, but it's already the seeds that you've been planting yesterday, last week, last month, 6 months ago. That's what's happening right now. And your actions are in line with that. And when I saw that, I was like, you know what? I can do the opposite. From now on, I am everything. I'm everything. And you know what? I'm worthy of everything, and I'm definitely good enough. And I just started consciously designing something that was going to allow me to live that life. And then I just went all in on my inner world. And that's when everything changed. So instead of me going on a journey, looking, trying, shifting things around, trying to work it all out, just running around in circles forever, because I was using the same mind that created all the problems to begin with and trying to fix myself, which is ridiculous. That's where all the frustration was coming from. And so I dropped it and I just stepped into something that was going to allow me to live that life. And I lived from the end state. Like for me, I already have
Right.
everything. I am everything. I'm everyone and everything. And I just gave it to myself.
You're
Yeah.
the beginning and the end. You're everything.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. So, so Zeno, how did you feel to finally recognize that your patterns were self-sabotaging you and they weren't just bad luck?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was pretty evident. I mean, I was on a mission of absolute destruction, for over 25 years. And I was either going to continue that with that. And that's when I realized, like, that's why I gave up. Around 40 years of age, I just gave up trying because it was pointless. I'd I'd gather all my motivation, all my energy to now rebuild myself, try to move away from my habits and now create that life that I felt like I deserved. And even if I got there, it didn't matter because my inner narrative and how I saw myself didn't match that anyway. So in the end, I always
Right.
self-sabotaged, even when the good stuff came into my life, you know? And so I saw that I was just repeating the same process over and over and over again until I realized, my concept of self, how I was perceiving myself was creating all of this mess. Yeah. And yeah, I was self-sabotaging my whole life.
Yeah, that's what I gathered from listening to your videos, and I can totally relate with that.
Yeah.
The inner dialogue, just oh, gets the better of us. It's so easy to just keep on repeating our old patterns and the same narrative, and we're like in this never-ending loop.
Yeah.
Just gotta break that cycle, break free, break
Yeah.
out, or die trying.
Yeah.
So, so how did these patterns of your self-sabotage like show up in areas of like maybe money and health and your intimate relationships?
Yeah. The only area where I wasn't self-sabotaging was relationships, but everything else I was. I don't know why. I guess I can't tell you
That's
why, because there
interesting.
mustn't have been like internal blockages there. I think I have a fairly good role model in my father in that sense. Like he was always very respectful towards women. So I didn't have any, I guess, ingrained negative beliefs. But outside of that, I was self-sabotaging in everything. My health,
Your health.
financials, everything. Anything that
That's
was
interesting.
related to creating anything meaningful into my life. Because deep down, I wasn't good enough. I was never enough. Nothing I did was ever enough. And that was a deep, ingrained belief. And that's when I started saying to myself, you know what, I'm everything, I'm all of it. I give it to myself now. You know, I never considered giving myself love and kindness and appreciation. I just kept feeding myself that old news. And then one day I said, no, I said, I'm giving myself my own story now. Yeah.
Interesting. It's really fascinating to me, Zeno, that self-negative talk didn't have a direct or negative impact on your intimate relationships.
I
Because
think
I
it
mean, me
definitely had
speaking
an
from
impact.
personal experience.
Yeah,
So
like it did have an impact. Like obviously, because I'm not treating myself with respect and kindness and appreciation, right? And so I was never the best partner I could have been. But in terms of like the relationship itself, like there were no, I think, deep sort of ingrained negative beliefs or I guess blockages there, you know. But that was the only aspect of my life. But yeah, I mean, being around somebody that's destroying themselves physically all the time obviously is not easy, you know.
right. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different aspects to what you're saying, that self-sabotaging that you were doing, you're self-destructing,
Yeah,
yeah, if you're in an intimate relationship, it's going to affect your partner.
of
Like,
course. And
I mean,
my
I've been
children.
with, yeah, and definitely,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, so,
Yeah.
yeah, my goodness. And I just speak from personal experience, because I used to self-sabotage myself and it showed up in my relationships
Yeah.
and a lot of them didn't, and I would meet other gentlemen that were also self-sabotaging. So you got two self-sabotaging people together. It's
Yeah.
just a mess, like
Yeah. 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 Crazy.
so yeah, I haven't seen anything good come from self-sabotaging, being stuck
Yeah.
in that loop. But that's why I was just wanting to get your take on that.
No, good.
And it's interesting. Um, I'm trying to, I'm sorry about this. I want to make sure I get to the
No,
real
good.
important questions. Um,
Take your time.
well, let's see. Hmm, okay, so I'm not sure. Well, I love the fact that you talk about how you don't get what you want in life, you receive who you are.
Yes.
Can you expand upon that and like give an example of how that directly played out in your life?
Yeah, sure. You know, what you are is consciousness, or I am, or Christ consciousness, or the present moment, or pure awareness, or Buddha nature, whatever you want to call this thing. You without any add-ons, right? No past, no future. However, what you hand to yourself, consciously or unconsciously, beliefs, assumptions, feelings, when we're little children, we absorb everything without question. We don't have the capacity to discern what we receive. And so I had a lot of beliefs around money, around many things. I forget your initial question. What was the question again?
That's okay.
What was it again? What was I going
Okay,
on the
so
tangent there?
just like expand upon, like give an
Oh,
example of how um okay, so you say that
yes,
you
yes. You get what you are, not by
okay,
what you want.
yeah,
Yes.
right,
When
yes.
when you are after, sorry, I'll get straight to the point.
No, that's
When
good.
you are actually looking for what you want, what you're actually telling yourself is that you don't have it. You know what I mean? So you're needing, you're wanting, you're searching, you're pleading, you're begging. I was a beggar. I was a victim of my circumstances, right? And even when it showed up, I said, that's not me, right? So on one hand, I wanted it so bad because I was so motivated because it wasn't me. So I needed to prove myself and I needed to find it in the world. And on the other hand, even if it came into my life, I would push it away because this is not who I am. I'm not financially abundant. I don't have these things. I'm not full of kindness and appreciation. You know what I mean? I need to find it. I need to prove to myself that I am those things when in actual fact, we're all of it. It was just the narratives that somebody passed on to you, energy. And so it's incredible that your perception of how you see yourself determines how you see life. It determines literally the reality that you see around you, what comes into your orbit, what doesn't come into your orbit. It's all through the perception of how you see yourself. And so that's why I say, if you shift your concept of how you see yourself and who you are living within consciousness, right? You are embodying a version of yourself, right? Full of ideas, assumptions, beliefs. That determines, right, what you attract. It determines literally the world around you. And if you are not what you are looking for, you're going to be on a long journey.
Forever. Lost in
And
space.
that was a journey for me that lasted 30 years, you know, because I kept looking for it, searching, wanting, and I was so motivated. And then one day I was like, no, I'll have it now, thanks. But that's where a little bit of faith and trust comes into this unseen process, you know, because if you say, yeah, I'm going to be these things now, but, you know, you're not telling your subconscious that throughout the day. You're not living within those feelings. That inner narrative does not match the world that you want to be experiencing. Forget about it. It doesn't work. Your subconscious is listening all day, every day. What are you feeding it? Just telling yourself a few affirmations throughout the day isn't going to do anything. I mean, you have to see and feel yourself as the things that you want to be experiencing, because you are those things, and they become your experience, and that's what you attract, because that's what you've been giving to yourself and to your subconscious. Just the way it works.
Absolutely. So when you're saying, already embody what you want,
Looking for.
what is your take on Neville Goddard and how he speaks about
Yeah.
living in the end?
Yeah.
Or are you familiar
Yeah, I'm
with?
very familiar.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Sorry about
Mm.
that.
Have you listened to any of his stuff in relation to how he perceives the Bible?
I'm not sure. I read one of his books. I have it packed away,
Okay, it doesn't matter.
and
No, all good.
but
Um, it's fascinating, absolutely extraordinary. He calls it a psychological drama of man. I know that some people wouldn't like that. Um, but yeah, I feel that he was way ahead of his time, to be honest.
yeah,
Um, yeah, like quantum physicists. It's a hard one.
That's-
People working in quantum, physics nowadays, they look at his work and they're saying that he's saying the same stuff, just psychologically, because what he's basically saying is what's actually out there is is how what you see is through the lens of how you perceive yourself. What you actually see depends on who's looking, and that's why I say, if you shift who you are internally and how you perceive yourself, you will perceive life differently, and it will turn out for you differently. And he was just very good at describing that and putting that into, like making it practical. And that's why he says feeling is the secret. Like what actually shifts your concept of self more than anything else is feeling, faith, the emotions attached with it. So you can feel financially free right now. You know what I mean? You don't have to have it physically, because that's what you're after anyway, right? Um, and by embodying that, you get more of it. If you live in abundance now, you will start to see more abundance. That's why you have to live in abundance now. You have to start embodying it. You cannot live in limitation and search for it outside of yourself, because that is your energy. That is what you're sending out, and you're going to receive that back. And even if it comes into your life, you're like, it's not hanging around. So yeah, I really like his work. It's incredible. I can't rate his work highly enough.
I liked his book a lot.
Yeah.
I think that with my personal experience with manifesting, creating my world, it's more like this is something that's happened to me since I was 4.5. Is it's being in a state of knowing.
Yeah.
Like I know I'm already financially free. I know it.
Yes.
I don't
Yeah.
even have to feel it. It's just a knowing. And
Yeah.
so there was a lot in his book that where he focuses a lot on you've got to embody the feeling and all that. But I
Moving from
manifested
the end
great
state.
things. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I can honestly say from my personal experience, I can just create like that out of thin air. Like
Yeah.
I don't need to feel it. I just know it. It's like I guess it might be the same thing.
Yeah.
just knowing it's already mine.
Yeah, it's good.
I mean, what do you think about that? It's the state
Yeah.
of knowing
Yeah.
and
Knowing like
versus the,
faith, like same sort of thing,
yeah, yeah.
Um, I really like to do ask affirmations. I think you probably know about that. So you're asking questions
Wow.
as an affirmation and then allowing and have faith and trust, asking these questions and allow the subconscious, allow Christ consciousness to come up with the answers instead of you consciously trying to work through everything. You don't know how everything comes together. It's not your job. Your
Right,
job,
right.
you're the gatekeeper. You're the gatekeeper to feed your subconscious, whatever you want to feed it, to allow it to work on your behalf.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that a lot of people, and you might agree with me on this, get caught up in the how and the why and the,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah,
like
who's
that's not for
looking?
us.
Yeah, who's looking? If you're searching and you're struggling and you're wanting and you're needing, you're telling your subconscious you don't have it.
Exactly. I agree. That's
And more you
exactly
shall
it.
have, and more I had of that, for so many years.
Exactly.
Incredible.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. So yeah. So let's get back on track here. Well, I really didn't get off. I wanted to find out where you stood when it came to Neville Goddard because I've read one of his books. I haven't read all of them, but just the
Yeah.
first one,
I
it's
listen to it as
amazing.
via an audiobook. You can go on Amazon, I think $10 or something. You get all of his books. Ridiculous. Yeah.
I don't know if I need to read any more of his books because I know how to create my life now the way
Yeah.
and so in the beginning stages of my self-awareness on that journey, his books were a great guide.
Yeah.
Um, but so I would just want to know, do you have any personal methods or tools that you have used
Mhm.
or use now
Mhm.
that literally reprogram your subconscious mind, your unconscious mind, all your minds, but
Yeah.
mostly, of course, our subconscious mind and even our unconscious mind.
Yes.
Is there
Yeah, there's
any
many.
particular tool?
There's a few.
Okay.
One thing I really like to do is flip a question. I'm very aware of these questions that come into our minds. Like let's say, for example, why do I always run out of time? Why does this always happen? Whatever it may be. And then I'll flip it straight away. I say, why is it, that I'm so organized? Why is it that every single time I go to do something, I always finish it? You know, sounds
There you
ridiculous,
go.
but your subconscious is
No.
listening. It's absorbing it. Instead of saying, why am I doing this? You know what your subconscious is going to do? It's going to be proven to you why you're always running out of time. And that's what you can do. It's like you can just flip the whole thing. You can use it to your advantage consciously, or you can unconsciously just go ahead and keep recreating the same problems. So that's one technique I really like to do, is just to, do like affirmations or ask questions consciously in the exact opposite direction if I catch myself. The other thing I definitely do is the evening affirmation walk. Whatever problem, whatever situation, or just being grateful, I do that every evening. I take my dog for a walk and I ask questions, in assumption, and allow the answer to come to me. Like I'd say, why is it that every single day I grow in wisdom and appreciation? Why is that? And I'll just let it go and I allow subconscious, I allow life to bring me the answers. You can do that for absolutely anything. If you have a problem, especially, I love that. Like I have problems sometimes, and problems are awesome. They are here for your benefit. They are meant to be here. So if I can't sort it out or whatever, I say thank you. Thank you that this problem is here. I know something incredible is going to come out of it. Instead of me trying to force it, think about it, work out the puzzle, and then just allow life to bring you the answer. So much more effective. And in the evenings, when I fall asleep, I do the Neville Goddard thing. It's three phases actually. First of all, I do a journal for just a little page, which I find really cool to do if you wanted to, if you're on this, inner transformation phase of your life. Journaling is incredible. Just looking back a few weeks, even you're like, that was only 2 weeks ago. You just grew so much consciously. It's incredible. And then the second phase, as I'm in bed, no matter what has happened, no matter I don't care. It could have been the worst day. Could have crashed my car. My wife left. It's a bit extreme. But I say, listen, thank you for the best day of my life, And then I actually look at a few events, like with my eyes closed, whatever those events are, and I see them perfectly unfolding. And I say, thank you that everything worked out perfectly today. Thank you that everything happened at exactly the right time. Thank you for sorting out all my problems. It's called revision. And it's so
Yeah.
powerful because the outside doesn't matter. Your subconscious is guiding the ship, and that's what's amazing about it. You just keep feeding it, and especially before you go to bed. It's such a powerful time. And then as I'm falling asleep, I'm just doing an imaginary scene, living my ideal life. Everything's worked out perfectly and feeling it and seeing it. The more real you can make it and tapping into that version of yourself consciously that feels very natural, living your ideal life, that's what you want to tap into. So, yeah, there's others, but there's a few of them.
I know those are fantastic methods. I am so on board with what you said about doing the journaling. I'm
Yeah,
such I go through notebook. I've got a slew of
yeah,
them. Like you should see my it's
yeah,
journaling.
yeah, yeah. It's
But doing it
amazing.
before you go to sleep,
Yeah.
that is such the perfect time,
And when you wake up in the morning too, the very first few things you
Yes.
should be telling yourself, like have something that you're going to tell yourself. Don't
Yeah.
allow your mind just to go on some tangent, start thinking about what happened
Right.
yesterday. Say thank you for the best day of my life, or thank you that every day my wealth is increasing, or thank you that every day my health is increasing, whatever it is, have a few little affirmations in the morning, first thing, and then just get used to that. If you do it for a week, you'll get so used to it. First thing you open your eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I use this method, or I used to use this method when I was getting to that point of becoming 100% self-aware, but I use a recorder, on my
Okay.
phone and
Yeah.
will record affirmations or ask
Yeah.
affirmations
Yeah.
or
Cool.
whatever and listen to it before I go to
Yeah. Yeah.
bed.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
right being plugged into
I
my
got to do a video
subconscious.
on that. I've had so many people ask me,
Yeah,
do ask formation video for YouTube, like not me look like not seeing me, but me saying those and doing some sort of alpha wave sort of sound in the background or something. I got to do it because that's something I would even use to fall asleep to or whatever. Just walking around.
absolutely.
Yeah. It's
That's just, but I love your methods. I'm glad that you shared those
got to be
because
simple. It's got to
I,
be fun. It should be a little bit creative,
yeah,
and you got to be tapping, into those feelings ideally as well.
absolutely. Yeah, I'm on board with those methods because I personally use the journaling one is my favorite.
Yeah.
But I also tell people, the way that is personal for me is the journaling, like you said, and
Mm.
then speaking things into existence because I know that there's so much power in our words,
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
and so I have so many stories that I talk about in my videos about just speaking what I want into existence, saying,
Yeah.
I know I have this, boom, bam, it's mine,
Yeah, yeah.
it's already
Yeah, it's
done.
incredible. We never, like so many people never would even consider that, to say, thank you, it's mine, you know,
It's right.
you
It's
know,
mine, it's done.
yeah, it's mine, it's
I
on its
don't even,
way. And that's a cool thing
yeah,
about gratitude. That's another thing that I really like to practice. You can be grateful for the things you have, which you should be, tapping into abundance, but also be grateful for what's to come,
yeah,
you know, be grateful that everything is on its way and have that faith and trust that, life's got your back.
yeah,
Even Albert Einstein said, even he himself, you think we all know him to be this intellectual, but he says, your
right.
imagination is so incredible. And the other thing he said is, you have to make a choice. Is life just coincidence? Just matter coming together, just whatever? Or, is the universe and life a loving place? Does it have your back? You have to make that choice because until you have, you're not going to have faith. You're going to keep trying to organize everything and consciously try and it's very
Yeah.
exhausting.
Yes, very exhausting.
Yeah.
It's people expend too much of their precious energies.
Mm.
Like you say in your videos, stop begging, stop
Yeah.
seeking, stop, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because
It's endless.
so much energies we can't get back,
You're just
no
telling
matter how
yourself you
much.
don't have it. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, like I love your videos. They're very inspiring. And I started
Yeah.
watching your videos more and more because it kept me motivated. I'm already self-motivated, but it kept me like
Yeah.
very motivated
Uh,
to get into my videos. And although I do talk about astrology and tie
yeah.
astrology into manifesting, my whole channel started off with just nothing but manifesting, and
Okay.
creating.
Yeah.
So, but I started going because I've always loved astrology, and you can tie astrology into manifesting. You can
Yeah.
use the
Cool.
traits,
Yeah.
and you know, so, and I've realized that people really love astrology too. So,
Yeah. It's just one of
so
those
I
things I never
combine.
really, for whatever reason, never came into contact with much, But yeah, I could totally imagine that could have a massive effect.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, but yeah, the more I listen to your videos, I just started saying to myself, I gotta ask him to see if he could come on my show and express, you
Yeah.
know, um, you know,
There's, yeah.
like
There's,
minds.
yeah.
It's so rare to find someone that's self-aware. I have reached out to others
Yeah.
and have not heard back from them, so
There you go.
I'm honored. I reached out to Sammy Ingram and Kimberly and a couple others, and I
Mm.
haven't heard back from them. So I'm
Yeah, there's been a few people that have asked me, but like, I don't know. I like your energy. Um,
I have a
there's been
lot
some
of
wild
it.
ones out there. There's been some really wild ones there. I'm like, sorry. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
open to lots of different things, but that was just too far off like left field. Like really.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very particular about who I would want to
Yeah.
interview.
Yeah.
If they're way out there and yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but yeah, I
Yeah.
have a plethora of energy, and I wasn't that way so much showing that energy in my beginning videos because I was
Yeah,
like,
isn't it amazing how the progression? Yeah.
it's embarrassing. Like, have you
Uh,
looked back at your old videos, and
you should look at
compared
what
your first?
you should go back, look at my first one or two, you'd laugh your head off. It's so
Did
bad. I
I
mean,
did.
it's a lot of people tell me that it's not, but you know how
It's
it is when you
not.
do it yourself, you know how much you learn and how much you grow. And I swear, I
Absolutely.
still haven't found 100% my voice. I think it's still evolving, like there's a couple
Yeah.
of times I was like, I think I kind of found my voice, but it's still evolving, And one thing I have to say though is like, especially recently, the last let's say 1 or 2 weeks, even though I've been like sick for a week and I had fever for a week, and I was still uploading every day. I was trying to put on a brave face, trying to
Wow.
trying to bring the energy, but but today was the first day where I was like back, But yeah, the progression, and now I'm so much more relaxed. Like, and the thing is, if you're going to be doing this like the way I do it, like every day, you should be having fun. I mean? You should be bringing, value and service and truly being there for somebody and actually giving an SHIT, not just like, saying stuff, making it sure a little bit entertaining, all that, that's fine. But like being there for somebody, truly wanting to help, but also enjoying it, like have fun. And when you put your heart out there and you say what you say, especially because like, there's definitely some things I say that I know some people are not going to like. And you put yourself out there and you're going to be open to criticism, but you know what? I couldn't care less. I actually love the negative comments. I love it. There's been so many people and I never give hatred back. And there's been so many people that have
Yeah.
either like deleted their comments or apologized. It's been awesome. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. You get a lot of good comments, so for the most part, but
yeah,
it is kind of, I keep the negative comments too, unless they're way
yeah.
out there. But it's a challenge. And
Yeah.
like you said, you just address them with love,
Yeah,
you know.
I have,
And
I have, I have deleted a few. I deleted one. I
have
actually,
you?
I don't know. It just says hide user from the channel. So I did one today. Actually, I got rid of him
Well,
because
yes.
he was not being constructive at all, and he was putting like he was never going to bring anything that was going to either help himself or help us or help like it was just
Right.
real bad negative stuff. And I said to him, look, don't take it to heart. I wish you all the best. Time to go.
Right. Sayonara.
uh, Yeah.
Sometimes you got to do it. It's your channel.
Yeah.
That's your baby,
Yeah.
And if you want to keep the positive vibes, then yeah, I
Yeah.
can
Look,
totally
there's
understand.
only been a few, but some people, you know, but I wish them all the best. And I really mean that.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yes. Send them off to space.
Yeah.
But yeah, that the positive, I'm on board with you when it comes to when you're doing your videos, bringing as much positive energy in them as possible. And
Mm.
once you get over, because I did watch some of your older videos,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, you
Yeah.
definitely have come a long
Yeah, yeah.
ways,
I mean,
you
I
know.
listen, everything had to happen the way it happened, Like there was that long
Absolutely.
phase where I was very serious. It wasn't so much serious, but I was like, I guess where it was coming from is like I was so over this old entity, that was like governing my life, I guess. And I was like, no. And I was like, don't do it. Um, and I guess that's what it was. I don't know, but a lot of people that watch the older stuff, they really like it.
Yeah.
And it was
Well,
fine. It had to happen. Like it was perfect. I mean, I was really like putting it out this, like like it was incredible. Yeah. Anyway.
yeah, I think what most people see, because this is what I see when I watch your videos, which is so important to me, is your authenticity.
Yeah.
You're you for the
Yes.
most part.
Yes.
But there's a process, like you said, it has to happen the way it is
Yeah.
because like you and myself, I was camera shy. I was
Yeah.
like a deer in headlights when I first started doing my videos, and I talked really slow,
Yeah.
like really slow, like a Taurus, just whoa.
Yeah.
And I thought I got to get some more of my energy into this.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's a process.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
you're looking
Yeah.
at yourself. We have to watch ourselves. That's just not
Yeah.
something that,
It
yeah.
was a weird,
But
the first few videos, it's weird, right? You watch yourself, you're like, it's unusual, but you get over it pretty quick. Um,
yeah, you're
but it's
right.
been like, personally, it's been the most amazing journey, like
Yeah.
even just communicating, speaking well, just the whole, just learning that naturally, just to be natural. And it's an art in itself, you're creating a piece of art. And one of the biggest things that really changed for me doing these videos is I realized I'm not talking to an audience. I'm talking to one person. There's not like a bunch of people all sitting together watching my video. Everybody's alone, everybody is alone on their own video, on their own phone. And I was like, I just watched some YouTube channel. I was like, oh yeah. Oh my God. And then I really started looking at the camera and I was like, I'm speaking to one person, I want to connect with that person and be there and not have this bridge, or speak to an audience. Hey guys, like what's going on? Welcome back, everybody. There's only one person, and it's such a nicer way to connect, like that.
I like that. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I've tried so many different ways, where I just don't even say anything in the beginning. I just jump right in.
Yeah.
I don't say hi and I don't say this. And then there's
Yeah.
some where I did say, hey, cosmic
Yeah.
fam.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
I've tried every single way.
Yes.
And I kind of just go with what I'm feeling
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
moment for that day. Like if I feel like not saying hi, I won't.
Yeah.
I
I
just
think
get into
jumping
it.
straight in is very authentic. Like you can
Yeah.
catch the person, like
Their
instead of like
attention.
being formal, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have my intro, but I don't know. I just keep rolling with it, and every now and then I don't. And then I had a coaching session a couple of days ago, and the guy goes, "You should really keep saying that." I was like, "Okay," because he says, "Because that reminds me, like." Own the present, shift your identity, dominate your reality. He says that's just a
Yeah.
reminder at the beginning of every video. I was like,
Yeah. I
okay.
noticed that. Yeah.
But yeah, everybody should have their own style. But I think not being formal, like like you shouldn't be formal. I mean,
Yeah.
like, how do you speak to your friends? Are you going to be like, "Hi, this
Hi.
is Zeno.
Well, I
Welcome
could
back
be.
to my channel." But you get over that pretty quick.
Yeah.
I mean, first you do those sort of things, but
Yeah, I just play around with it. Like as I've only been doing it, for a short amount of time, like you have. So
Yeah,
um, I just experiment, but usually I just kind of go with what I feel
yeah,
for the
yeah,
moment because my emotions.
yeah,
But yeah, I think what I like most is just getting into it, just
yes,
getting right into it and not wasting anyone's time and just throw
yeah.
myself into it. But
Yeah, and you can tell
anyways,
that, with any of the YouTube channels, that have experience, they all do that. They don't
yeah.
post, they don't, and they know the first 10 seconds, you know.
That
I mean, it's
hook.
not actually true for absolutely every channel. I know there's channels out there that just have such a solid following. It really doesn't matter what they say in the first 10 seconds,
Yeah.
they just love
Yes.
their videos. But for the most part, especially if you're growing initially, like you really want to get off to a good start and grow your channel and actually build that audience initially, you should be captivating somebody within the first 10 to
Yeah.
20 seconds.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll do some roundoffs and cartwheels in the beginning. Maybe that way at my
Yeah.
age, get people laughing, but I can still do them anyway. So let's get um okay, so I want to ask you this question because this is something that is really close to my heart as far as the journey that I went on for self-awareness, and that is
Mm,
um, how did you personally rewrite your your old subconscious beliefs? We have those
mm,
limiting beliefs and all that. Um, because you can get stuck in that, like we were talking about in that
yeah.
loop. The
Yeah.
background programming is, I call it the
Yes.
subconscious. So, how did you literally rewrite that? Like, is there one particular method that you can talk
Yeah.
about that really made the difference in rewriting your subconscious mind?
Um, your concept of self is through which everything flows. And once I saw that, I said, okay, I've been living as a weak, watered down version of myself, dragging along everything, all those old beliefs, ideas, assumptions, past experiences. And I was always looking at what I didn't have. And so I said to myself, if I truly want to make a change, I have to be that version of myself that has it, right? And so what I did is I just reverse engineered my life at 42. You need to know what you would like from life. You don't have to understand how, you don't have to understand exactly all the fine details, but have a basic understanding and then find out who's living that life, who's living that life, like what version of yourself is actually living that life. And you can tap into that. And once I figured out that, then I decided to step into it. And the way you can, shift away from all those old limiting beliefs and all that stuff, it's just by training your mind to be attentive, and have attention on what you want and also who you are. And just instead of trying to, like, let's say those negative thoughts come in, your past and whatever it might be, instead of trying to, work it out or put attention there and saying, oh, why did that happen again? Oh, I'm back there. What you want to do is start training the muscle in your mind, your attention, to just shift your attention straight away. Like, just shift it away to the things you want and understand it's yours and who you are, and just start consciously abiding in a version of yourself that is your choice. And it's just by shifting your attention away, all those old stories and narratives and beliefs, they just start to fade away, as opposed to trying to work out your problems, trying to, every time you see it coming, you're like, you look at it, why did I do that again? Straight away, you're giving it energy straight away. There's nothing to sort out. There's no problems to fix. All you want to do is shift your attention. So by training your attention to shift onto the things you want and who you're actually consciously living as, that's how I did it.
Right. No, that's awesome. Did you ever find it difficult to catch yourself um, with those negative subconscious? Some people just
Yeah.
stay in that loop and they're not able to catch those limiting beliefs or that I call it the internal dialogue
Yeah.
that they in the hamster wheel, you
Yeah.
know. And did you find it difficult at first to catch yourself in that
Um,
negative
Yeah,
thought?
I mean, I was ready. So, you know what I mean? But I know exactly what that's like because I've tried that before. where I was like trying to change and be in the moment, be present, like be conscious. The problem with that is your old mind is so unrelenting, and it's so sticky. If you don't, and that's why it didn't work for me. If you don't have a new concept of yourself that is everything that you want, that you now put your focus on that, if you're just trying to stay present, it's really difficult, especially if once you start moving through life and things are moving around you and you're moving and you're doing, it's really hard to pay attention to not allow that stuff back into your life. So what you want to do is be very clear as to who you want to be and understand you're not going on a journey. You start embodying that every day. And that's why it worked. Yeah, you know I mean, like,
Right.
yeah, you really need to know who you'd like, who would you like to embody, because you've been embodying somebody that was not your choice. And that's all that old noise and the old news and the old narrative and all of that stuff. So by consistently shifting to that version of yourself that has everything, is everything, and you are definitely more than enough. I love that. You're definitely more than enough. You are not lacking. It gives you so much confidence. Yeah. But yeah, but I was ready, at 42, I was either going to do this or I was going to keep just listening to the old mind, just keep feeding it. I was feeding myself hatred, negativity, nonsense, limitation for so long. I was ready. I was like, no, thank you. And I just went to what I wanted and I said, that's mine. Thanks. And this is who I am.
That's awesome. That you even got to that point in your life where you're like, enough is enough,
Well, yeah, it was
and
either that or I wasn't going to hang around for much longer.
right, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
I was
My
destroying
goodness.
myself. Yeah.
Um, I can totally
Hmm.
relate with you in a lot of ways. Um, but the would you agree that working on your self-concept is vital, is a
Yeah.
crucial step that you would encourage
Yes.
everyone to do, is it deep
I think it's
and
for
dig
me, it's
into it.
those two things when they gel together. It's SASEXY. Very nice. It really is because I went down that path, the Buddhist, the Hindus path. And if you want to literally just completely let go of the world and be completely at peace and in the moment and literally allow everything to just happen however you want it, if you can do that, good on you. But
Yeah,
if you want to also create amazing things into your life, you can have both. You can be at peace, you can be conscious, you can be free, you can be now, and you can also decide what version of yourself are you going to step into that's going to empower you, that is going to allow you to live that life. Use it as a tool as opposed to being enslaved, to that old concept of yourself that was never your choice, not your design.
so true. That's so true. I'm glad that you said that. It's when a person has stellar, stout self-concept, it does make them
Yeah, and it's a game, It's like, because the thing is,
what
like,
you
if you
said.
take your new version very seriously, you're going to be like, oh, this is me now. Or what about this? Like,
Yeah.
you're playing a game. Consciousness, like life is consciousness at play. You know what I mean? And who you embody and who you see yourself as, knowing full well you're wearing a mask. It's so sweet. You're not taking everything so seriously, but you're living the life of your dreams. And it's everything is possible.
That's I think that is just to me just the most important thing, and it's good to hear that you believe that
Yeah.
that working on your spiritual life, taking the gloves off, willing to get deep and dirty with yourself, because it takes a conscious effort to go deep within ourselves, and
Yeah.
everything, in my opinion, starts in our spiritual life.
Yeah.
But if you've got a stellar self-concept, you've done the work,
Yeah.
who you are, what you want, and you embody that.
Yeah.
So
But
that
once you see
is
it, it
just,
gets easy. It's
yeah.
like once you've eaten chocolate, you don't need to know what chocolate tastes like no more. Once you see that you are creating everything into your life by what you feed your subconscious, Once you see it, why would you give yourself anything that is not empowering you? Oh,
All right. I'm back. I
ah,
had to get something real quick, but I heard you.
yeah. Once you
So,
see it, it's like, why would you give yourself anything that is not empowering you? It's only
yeah.
because you don't have faith in it yet. You're not quite sure. You're still trying to change your life
Mm,
externally, thinking that's how it's done. But once the penny drops, why would you give yourself anything that is not empowering you? Because you have that power. You are the creative process, like you're everything.
yeah, exactly. I totally 100% agree with everything that you have said. It's awesome. You know, people don't realize the power that they personally
Yeah,
hold.
they're
Oh,
doing
they don't.
everything. Yeah. And then why wouldn't you do it? Like
Right.
it's not like, like you're gonna hurt yourself now. Are you gonna
Right.
really do that? Like once it's like, no, I give myself
Yeah.
everything first now. Because it was never about your circumstance. It was never about outside. It was never, you created it all by the version of yourself that you perceived yourself at for all those years.
Right. Yeah. I totally I resonate with all that because lived it. um, so I've done a lot of questions here, but I think the main point was um, I think I covered most of everything I wanted to. Yes. Actually, I have one more question because
Yeah,
this
go for it.
okay, if you don't mind, if you have a
No,
little more
no, all
time,
good.
because I don't want to keep you away from your family. But what do you personally believe is the biggest myth about self-sabotage that people need to stop believing?
The biggest myth.
I'm sorry.
That's an open-ended question.
I know.
Yeah. I guess if you try to stop self-sabotaging, you give the whole thing energy. You know what I mean? Because the who is actually self-sabotaging is everything, not the self-sabotaging, on its own. Like it's if you put your energy on trying to stop these things, and I did that. I tried to stop drinking. Try to stop smoking weed. I try to stop overeating. I try to stop with all running after my desires, and it just got harder. You know what I mean? Self-sabotaging, if you put your energy and your focus there, that's what you're giving your subconscious, the contents of your thoughts and where you are consciously abiding. Doesn't matter whether you want these things or you don't want these things, you will get more of it. So when you say, I'm going to stop drinking, what you're saying is, I have a problem with drinking, and the content of the thought is drinking, and that's what's being absorbed, and you're going to go do more of it. But the person who's behind the scenes, who's got this issue, that's what's creating everything, the pain, the misery, all of it. And that version of yourself was never who you are. It's never been who you are, just dreamt up. So when you swap that out, your habits go along with it.
It's a good one. I appreciate you, Zeno,
It's all
for yeah, that was kind of a like you said, an open-ended question, but
right.
yeah, it's just something that I realize that you talk about a lot in your videos
Yeah.
is self-sabotaging. And
Mm.
so, and I think the reason why I asked you those questions is because it's such, to me, an epidemic in most people's
Yeah.
lives of
Yeah.
that I see are all around me. I'm sure you see it too.
Yes.
Even just somebody in the grocery store,
Yeah.
they can their
Everyone's doing it.
behaviors, the way they talk, is
Yeah.
self-sabotaging. Like,
Yeah.
and so it all goes back to like when we are born, right out of the womb, we're
Yeah.
boom, slapped with programming,
Yes.
that is not what we asked for. So
Nah.
we have to go through our whole lives, and
Yeah.
most people are, and I say this personally speaking because I used to self-sabotage, and I went through times where I wanted to end my life too. So
Mm.
When I heard your stories and everything, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like, the younger version, male version of me, but except for I didn't do drugs, and I
Yeah.
didn't drink, but I had similar self-sabotaging thoughts and
Yeah.
issues, So I know that that so many people around us are struggling with that. So
I should probably even talk more about it, to be honest. Like I've done a few videos, but yeah, and I've been thinking a little bit more recently, like I want to involve more of my life into the videos, like personal stories.
yeah,
Because when you help yourself, you can help others, and if you can expose that, and I have no problems, I have no problems with exposing myself, and showing all of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
You've done a great job, sprinkling some of your stories, and it helps people relate to you.
Yeah, for
It
sure.
becomes more personal,
Yes.
and I know that storytelling is actually quite
Yeah.
important,
Yeah.
in grabbing your audience and
Tomorrow, wait
keeping
for
them.
tomorrow's video.
Yeah, like what is he gonna tell us
No, no, no.
today?
But like, someone asked me about fear today, and I was literally thinking today, like, I should really do a video about anxiety and fear and how to skyrocket your self confidence. So yeah, I think that'll be tomorrow's video.
That's a very good one. Addressing fear
Yeah,
is,
fear
oh
is
my
everywhere.
goodness.
Like it's underlining. It's the underlining thing and everything. When I try to tell people like friends and that, like nobody agrees, but I know it. I know that the fear is like the underlying cause to everything, every problem, every issue, every disease, even sometimes. Like it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, but I've seen it for so long and I was always willing to accept that. Um, but yeah, I definitely want to address it.
Oh yeah. I'm totally on board with that, addressing the fear and everything.
Yeah.
It's
Because on the flip side, once you understand it, once you can work it out, then the flip side is obviously, you know, being very confident, but without it being a phase.
yeah.
Not
Oh
something
yeah.
you just like 3 months or for 1 hour after the video, like I'm confident now, but then, and then it disappears. Yeah, I'm gonna try and avoid
But
that
oh
tomorrow.
no. Yeah, it's for most people, for most people, it's a process.
Yeah,
It's a process. It's a process. It's taken me 52 years. Well, actually, it was 47 is when I literally became 100% self-aware. But up until that point, it was a process.
yeah,
That's 47 years, of, you know, um, I knew I was on that journey,
yeah,
but
yeah,
oh my goodness. But it's not like I'm like there now. No, it's just when you're 100% self-aware, oh my gosh, life is just so easy.
yeah,
Like, it, there's no more begging and there's no more searching and there's no,
yeah,
thing is just, I don't know, but, I'm sure you can relate with that.
yeah.
And
No,
that's,
if you are
having you on my
consciousness,
show.
yeah.
Yeah, being totally 100%
But if
consciously
you are
aware.
consciousness, that means you're the space in which everything is.
Yeah,
Um,
right,
to say that you are not something is,
right. Yeah.
yeah. But anyway,
Yeah. So, but
mm,
yeah, it is a process for most people, and it's just really sad to see people, struggling in their lives, like you said, with fears and
yeah,
the self-concept and everything. I've been working with my mother, and she's come a long ways, but it is our family members, it's our friends, it's the people on YouTube, it's everywhere. And
yeah,
um I don't know. You seem to be like myself and passionate to help others,
yeah,
be a guide. And
yeah,
and then when you share your stories, that really does,
yeah,
just grab your audience's attention. That's actually what kept me coming back was your stories,
yeah, yeah,
and the
yeah,
fact that you were authentic
yeah,
and just here's my guts, type
yeah,
of thing that
yeah.
you said a little bit
I
at a
love that.
time.
I love just saying, you
Yeah.
know what? I've made plenty of mistakes, like, and I have no problem exposing that, and I think everybody should have at least some capacity to do that, because once you become, conscious, you take responsibility back. You stop blaming others. You stop blaming your life. You stop blaming your
Exactly.
past. You stop making excuses. You start seeing it. When you start being aware of what you're telling yourself all day, you start to go, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
what have I been
Yeah.
doing?" But it's so awesome to see. And then you have all the possibilities. Everything becomes available.
So true. But if there is one thing that you want our audience, the individual listening, I got that from you. I'm going to start doing that. I like that. One person. um, if there's just one thing that you could say, encouraging words or a method or anything that you think could help point, like someone that's just maybe brand new to this whole
Yeah.
becoming self-aware and manifesting journey, is there anything, any wise words that you would have for that new person coming into
Mm.
this, where
Yeah.
where they could just
The
start?
belief, I guess, the belief that you are not enough is an illusion. You are more than enough. You have always been perfect since the beginning of time. Treat yourself with kindness and respect and appreciation, above all else. And just start doing that. Forget everything else. Don't worry about being self-aware. Don't worry about enlightenment. Don't worry about all of that stuff. If you're really new and you're suffering, be the most amazing person to yourself. Start right now. What's stopping you? You know what I mean? Just come into the present moment. Start giving yourself love, kindness, respect. Yeah, that's what I would say.
It's beautiful, Zeno. And so I am going to end our
Yeah.
session, if that's okay. And
Yes.
thank you so much
Yeah.
for
Thank you for your
joining me,
time. I have
Zeno.
no idea how long we were talking. It was probably a little
I
while, but then
know.
yeah, thank you
Yeah,
so much for
I'm
having me on, and yeah,
yes,
awesome
I'm honored.
questions. And maybe at some stage we'll do it again. We'll see.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I
All right.
was honored to have you here, and we
Yeah.
will talk soon.
No worries. I'll
And
catch you next time.
yes, absolutely.
All right. See you, Julie.
See you later, Zeno.
Bye.